think we'll just go with what's on. Yeah, I got you, David. Thank you. We'll go with what's on our agenda for now. What I don't encourage is any crafting of a motion at the table where we start wordsmithing stuff. So if you're going to put a motion in place, please work on it at this time. So with that, we'll start with the first motion in our agenda. Director Davidoff, I believe is this your motion or was this Director Graham's motion? It was yours. Director Graham, you go ahead and then we'll have Davidoff who's second on that one. Go ahead.
Thank you. Whereas under section 25 of the Coastal Ferry Act.
You can, if you want to just do the therefore be it resolved.
Therefore be it resolved that the province of BC recognize that all ferry services within the province of BC are necessary to the health, safety, and welfare of all the residents and should be deemed as an essential service, and that the UBCM work with the affected areas in the province of provincial government to find a solution to ensure that the rights of all British Columbia and the residents are equally on the coast and interior of BC.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, so our speakers list right now is Davidoff and Hanegraaff. Davidoff, go ahead.
The motion is clear. We discussed this at our last meeting. We do have an anomaly in British Columbia where under section 25 of the Coastal Ferry Act, the ferry services are deemed essential, and there is a provision in section 25 that says should there be a conflict between the Labor Relations Code and the Coastal Ferry Act, the Coastal Ferry Act shall prevail. We don't have that protection for our inland ferries. And so this motion, I believe, requests that. And there was an interesting article in the Castlegar News that was written. Would anyone ever dream of not having a roadway blocked for that led them to essential services? So bottom line is that we need to address the anomaly. This is one way of addressing it, and I urge the board to support this motion. The anxiety and the tension and the cost that's being spent right now on this in our communities has got to end, and it can only end with legislation because the current Labor Relations Code does not allows this to happen. So this needs to stop. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Dr. Hanegraaff, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I feel a bit of deja vu after last month. So I think there's some confusion around what essential services means. Essential services does not, an essential service designation does not mean business as usual or full service. And that's why essential service levels have to be determined before strike or lockout action can happen in the event of a labor dispute. So I completely understand what this resolution is trying to do. I just don't think that this does what you want it to do. And if you really extrapolate and say that the Coastal Ferries Act says that service will be provided, what you're also saying then is that anyone covered by that act would not have the right to strike, the legal right to strike. And that's not the case either. There was the last strike with BC Ferries was in 2003 and it only lasted 5 days, as opposed to what's going on here, which has been, I think, long and painful for everyone involved. And so I'm going to say that there are essential services in place. And as I said last month, I think the problem really is that the essential service levels are not adequate to meet the needs of the affected communities. And that's different than saying we need essential services. We have essential services. The problem is with the level that has been determined by the Labor Relations Board. And just in closing, I also think we're kind of out of our lane on this. This is a labor relations issue and should be dealt with as such. That's why we have a labor board in BC.
Thank you, Director Hanegraaff. Was that it? Was there just, okay. Paige, go ahead.
I don't know if it works, but I have the same thoughts as Director Hanegraaff. And when we look at the therefore, I know you didn't want to wordsmith.
Well, we can do amendments on motions.
So what I would have proposed would be the amendment is that the province of British Columbia increase essential service levels for all ferry services within the province of BC that are necessary for the health, safety, and welfare of all residents, period. And the UBCM work with the affected areas as already written. Because
so it's really helpful if you put that in writing and at least in chat or email so we know what you're suggesting.
Sure, I'll drop it in chat.
Through the chair, if I could get an email, that's appreciated, just because I can't copy and paste from the chat because it's on a different computer.
Okay, thank you.
Throw it in chat and email.
Okay, so that's helpful for the wording to understand. I think you're moving an amendment, so I just want to first see if there's a second to that amendment, or do we need to have it read again before we get a second? Can you read the whole therefore be it resolved in terms of what you would be suggesting?
Keeping all the rest. Therefore be it resolved that the province of British Columbia increase essential service levels for all ferry services within the province of BC as necessary for the health, safety, and welfare of all residents, period. And that the UBCM work with the affected areas and the province of British Columbia to find a solution to ensure that the rights of all British Columbian residents are protected equally on the coast and in the interior of British Columbia.
Is there a second to that amendment? Newell seconded, okay. So on the amendment, it doesn't change it too much, but I had Weatherhead and then Jackman. And you're still typing it out, Branch.
Yeah.
Okay, Weatherhead, go ahead.
I'm not sure where I sit on the amendment exactly, but the coastal ferries were also privatized as same as inland ferries. And yet, I think the essential word is that because it's built into the Coastal Ferries Act as an essential service, meaning it's just essential to keep those ferries running all the time. And maybe it's in how we view this word essential. Are we perhaps, because of what we're trying to do, and I think I could be wrong if what Director Graham is going for is work with us to deem how is this deemed essential as an ongoing thing without all these interruptions. So if the BC Ferries has that built into the BC Ferries Act and it's not affecting their as Director Hanegraaff is stating, they can. I guess they can still strike too. I don't really know what that means. So I think what Graham was aiming for was working with the inland to deem what we need. Is that correct? What we were trying to go for?
Through the chair.
Through the chair,
Through the
please.
chair. So sorry.
Yeah, and I think that's what the amendment is trying to clarify.
Okay.
But Director Graham, if you want to respond, you're welcome to.
Thank you, through the chair. We're trying to get equality here.
Okay. So Jackman?
Yeah, so listening to Director Hanegraaff and respecting her deep understanding of labor issues and rights to strike, my thoughts are more around what we were trying to emphasize in her previous letters. I'm thinking we need to not use the term essential services, because what I thought, and so I have something else to Ange and to the CEO and board chair, and I'm right now, just throwing an idea out.
No,
Take out the essential services word, that
it's
is
service levels.
health,
Can we
safety,
not
welfare,
have back and forth? Thank you.
health, safety, welfare of all residents. Sorry, there's an and, but should be considered when determining minimum inland ferry service levels on a site-by-site basis and the UBCM work with. Because we're not all the same. And the work, in my mind, that the chair of the LRB stated it needs to be done, and with no timeline, saying there's a stay on that one Christmas holiday order. The January 5th statements from the LRB chair suggest to me there's a lot of work to be done site by site to determine minimum service levels. They talk about precedents, they talk about Adams Lake. Just take out the word essential services and think along the terms of minimum service levels site by site, because I will see a very different and support set of recommendations either for airport or Glade than I would see supporting for the Kootenai Lake main crossing. So let's get the word essential services out. I don't know where the director's motion is going to go, but I think that's what Director Hanegraaff might be telling us is the problem.
Thank you. On process, did you email that to Ange? Because we can't cut and copy out of chat. Okay, thanks. Just making sure she had it. Thank you.
And my email has a typo in it, but I need, so you know.
Okay, so we're gonna stick to the one amendment for now. Back to Hanegraaff was next on the list. Go ahead, Hanegraaff.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time finding my words here. There is equality. There is the problem, as I see it, is not with the legislation. I think there's disagreement around the decision made on essential service levels by the Labor Relations Board. If BC Ferries were to go out on strike, which I think that our collective agreement carries them forward for a few more years anyway, but if they were to go on strike prior to taking strike action or prior to being locked out by the corporation, essential service levels would have to be determined. So the problem, I don't know where this Coastal Ferry Act has come in as being the thing we hang our hat on to ensure that we have adequate ferry service. It's no different. It doesn't guarantee business as usual any more than the Essential Services Act under the Labor Relations Board. So I think that we're trying to solve a problem, and I do recognize that it is a problem, but we're not doing it in a way that is going to achieve the result you want. The Coastal Ferry Act does not guarantee business as usual in the event of a labor dispute, and we need to recognize that.
Thank you, Director Hanegraaff. Just on process, I want to remind Director Davidoff, we need amendments and specific to the motions in the chat, but when we start posting long things like that, not only do I lose the amendment, but I lose the speakers list. So please don't use chat for that kind of information. On the amendment, Davidoff was next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think what's being proposed in the amendment is, I just want to clear up some confusion. I posted the Coastal Ferry Act for everyone to see, to understand that we don't have this language protecting inland ferries. And what it says there is very clear. This is copied right out of the legislation. It says essential service designation, other labor relations code matters. 25(1), in the event of a conflict between this act and the labor relation code, this act prevails. This act, the Coastal Ferry Act, trumps the Labor Relations Code. That's legislated. And again, there's language that goes on to talk about deeming of the delivery of ferry services as necessary for the protection, etc. The motion that was created that Director Graham has presented was well thought out, was discussed, and what we have done is we're asking for the same protections and the same language that exists to protect Coastal Ferry Act users. And the conflict language saying that the Coastal Ferry Act trumps the Labor Relations Code is clear for everyone to see. That's why the Coastal Ferry Act has been raised in this motion, and inland ferry users should have the same language and the same protection through legislation. And that's what this motion is about. It's not about someone's right to strike or not to strike. This is about equity. Thank you.
Thank you. And friendly reminder, this goes to AKBLG where we get to repeat all of this. And so just let's be mindful of the fact that this is a motion that goes to a big body that will debate it there as well. So our effort should equate getting as clear as possible, noting we're still going to have a lot of debate at AKBLG on this. And the emails keep coming. Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor. I see Jackman just sent something else in as an amendment. We're going to stick to this amendment. One more speaker, and then we're going to take the vote on it. Hannah Graff.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, and that's ironically, the Coastal Ferry Act was brought in 2003 as a first step towards privatizing the BC Coastal Ferry Service. Ironically, that didn't happen, but what did happen was the inland ferries, which are part of the highway service, were privatized. I think, if I'm not mistaken, around 2004. They broke into 3 different contract areas around the province. So I just find it interesting that we're viewing the Coastal Ferry Act as something that provides additional protection when really it was designed to privatize what we now call, BC Ferry Corporation runs. Just FYI.
Thank you. Dr. Davidoff, we have more amendments coming. We have the rest of the motions to go through, or if we're going to debate whose act applies, I don't want to keep doing that. Go ahead.
So, Chair, if the Coastal Ferry Act legislation is not necessary, which seems to be the intimation, then this is on the books since that whole time, and that's what we're asking for inland ferries. That's it. Thank you.
So, on the amendment, Vandenberg.
Sorry, but you're saying not all of us are on chat. We're not seeing what's coming. And
that's why I indicated please don't put stuff in chat. That's not the amendment.
So, but I am interested in getting to a favorable resolution to offer to AKBLG, and I feel at a disadvantage when I don't know what else is kind of going on. So I just wanted to point that out. It's awkward.
It is very awkward. This is the kind of stuff we would generally do well in advance of today to make sure we got the wording, we know what we're doing, share your thoughts, work it out with each other. So I don't know that we're going to solve all of this today, but we have a motion on the floor with an amendment. Sorry, we have an amendment on the floor that's trying to get to the point. I think the point is equity. That's what I've heard that is consensus based. So that's where we're trying to get with this. Sorting out which act applies is really not our role, but it is the role of the province. So on the amendment, all those in favor? Either nobody or just 2. Who's opposed to the amendment? So I've got, you're gonna have to throw those hands up, folks.
Point of order, I don't know what the amendment is.
Okay.
I just tried to log on to the chat. Yeah, I don't.
It was over email as well. So the amendment is, therefore be it resolved that the province of British Columbia increase essential service levels on all ferry services within the province of BC as is necessary to the health, safety, and welfare of the residents, and that UBCM work with the affected areas and the province to find a solution to ensure that rights of all British Columbia residents are protected equally on the coast and the interior. That is the amendment. All those in favor? Hands up.
In favor.
In favor.
Redoing that.
Please just hands up. This is really difficult for me to track. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Online 7. Those opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The amendment fails. So we're back to the original motion. Director Jackman, go ahead.
A slightly different amendment, which I thought was sent to Ange, my email cut out, which is weird, but it's now it's gone out. If I could read it.
It didn't go to Ange. It was, your email cut out as you were typing your name in, Director Jackman, so it just says Ange.
You can read it.
I'm trying to word
Hey.
the email didn't happen.
I will immediately forward it to Ange. I don't know who else it really didn't go to.
If you can include the group director email on that.
I can send
I
it.
wasn't going to.
Stuart's doing it. Just read it.
CEO.
Yeah.
So therefore be resolved that the province of British Columbia recognize that all ferry services within the province of BC are necessary to health, safety, and welfare of all the residents. That should be considered when predetermining minimum inland ferry service levels on a site-by-site basis, and that UBCM work with the affected areas and the provincial government, etc.
Seconded. Okay, so that amendment. Sorry, yes, go ahead.
It is not using the word essential services, because I think what we've seen out of the LRB so far makes no sense to me. It has 5 bullets of essential and everybody else. Get away from essential. Predetermined minimum levels. I think we will see that's better language. I hope the LRB can work with. Predetermining in conjunction with the province and the ministry what makes sense to protect each community's welfare.
Okay, so that is now the amendment on the floor. Speakers to the amendment, Cunningham.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to support the amendment because I don't think it doesn't give us specific change the act here and change this there. It tells the province what we want, what needs to be done in reasonably simple language and leaves it up to them to make sure they do it. And I think that's, whether it be this act or the next act, is not really our problem, it's theirs.
Other speakers on the amendment?
And there's still a typo in it. Bad grammar.
Okay. Sorry, are you raising your hand, Hannah Graft? Oh, thank you. Go ahead.
I need a shorter last name.
You can just say me and it'll tell me it's you.
Okay, I think this, the proposed amendment, I should say, is gets us closer to what is trying to be achieved here. I'm still not clear on whether we're actually in our lane or not. I think that's someone else will tell us that, but I think that this is this gets us closer to achieving what we're trying to achieve than what was previously stated. So I support this.
Thank you. David Off, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we are moving closer. This is a complex issue and we can't do it justice here. We've spent hundreds of hours on this. This is, the board's seeing like minutes of this. We're spent hundreds of hours on this issue. And the key thing is that the legislation change is what is being requested in the motion. However, if it takes this amendment to move this forward, this can then be debated again at AKBLG. So even though it changes the intent of the motion is to change the legislation, not just move forward towards that. But the amendment does move us forward. And again, there'll be an opportunity to debate it at AKBLG. So I will support the amendment, knowing that there'll be more time to address this. And I'm sure it'll go through other iterations at AKBLG. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No one else on the speakers list? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Good work. The motion as amended. All those to further discussion? So therefore be it resolved has been amended. And you've got it?
Yes, I just didn't see the spelling error.
It's bad grammar through the chair.
We're not going to
I
talk
think
about it
the
right now.
first 10 words you did
Aiden will find it in the minutes if we get that far.
It speaks like I speak, which is not always so goodly.
So goodly, okay. Well, in goodly nature, all those in favor of the amended motion? Thank you. Anybody opposed? Okay, good work. Yes.
Through the chair, like, I'm not gonna be going to AKBLG, I'm gonna be out of town at that time. So do you present this or does somebody else?
We work it out. Same with UBCM.
Okay.
It goes through, it goes to UBCM, then we kind of allocate who's speaking to what, making sure someone's in the room. Okay. Just remind us as we're leading up to it. And any supporting words you want to include in it at that time, then we'll work that out. Okay, 5.4.1.2, Director Page submitted this yesterday.